jungle.
Rolling.
Hello, welcome to The Jungle. I'm your host, Amberly Lobo. Today, we are chatting to an iconic Australian painter and artist who has created a super successful and a super colourful art empire. We find out how she did it, plus we chat about the creative process, obstacles, motherhood, monetising your art, and so much more. It is the amazing Anya Brock.
Welcome to the jungle with Amberly Lobo. Welcome to the jungle.
Anya Brock, welcome to The Jungle.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I feel like this outfit really is like made for this environment.
My specialty is sartorial, like, correctness.
Yeah.
So I like dress for places. I was like, what can I don't want to blend in too much, but I must be tropical.
Oh no, I'm loving it. You are popping. Well, I want to start at the beginning because although today you've established yourself as this iconic Australian artist and painter, you actually had your start in fashion. So take us back to Applecross Senior High School where you were like raiding up shops and making your own clothes.
Yeah, I was thinking about this the other day. We were in this like little arty gang and we used to like make our own, like alter our own jeans and make our own bags and stuff. And I remember the bench boys, which was like the cool year 12 boys would yell out things like street rat and everything and we were like, yeah, because we were in like band shirts and we're all grungy and, it was fun. So yeah, I just started, like, I'm a maker. I just started making stuff. I was like, get a sewing machine, start making this, making that. And then from there, I kind of knew that I wanted to go into fashion, but I did TE even though I didn't, need to. I guess my parents were like, you must. And then I went into fashion and textile design at TAFE, which back then, I think it's quite a different course now, but back then it was super loose and creative. Like it was less, sometimes I see design as being a little like kind of a tunnel vision towards the end result, whereas this was like really experimental. There was like figure drawing classes.
You did like life drawing.
Yeah. We did life drawing with nude models. It was so like, yeah, it was really great in that regard. I feel like the basis of a lot of my practice was made then. And, we had a beautiful print class where I learnt to mix colours from pigments and mediums. And even the practice of printmaking was pretty loose and painterly as opposed to being registered and doing all of the, repeat prints, which we learnt as well. But because I hate technicalities, like I am a totally non-technical person in general, aka lazy, I just kind of took it to the art end of everything. So, and then it was kind of less about like pattern making and sewing.
I know, but so in this time while you were at TAFE, you somehow managed to start your own fashion label. How did that sort of come about?
Yeah, I was hanging out with a girl called Ali Cotton, who's a really successful designer now in Sydney. And we were like real badasses. Like we pretty much failed second year. But I think we're both so driven that we kind of egged each other on. And I started a label at the end of second year. I think at the time I was making clothes and I would go into certain stores and I think especially Eros, which is now in South Freo but used to be in Freo. Penny, who was a big supporter there, she'd be like, that's a great top. Where'd you get that? And I'd be like, I made it. And, so it kind of snowballed from there. And she'd be like, can you make some for us? And I was like, I guess, So then she'd be like, I'll take 6 of those. So then a week later, I'd be like, here's those 6 tops you wanted. It was so kind of innocent and there was no considered process about it. Because if I knew the process, I wouldn't do it.
It would have been too hard.
Yeah.
Because you were what, like
I was
19?
like 18 or 19.
19?
Yeah. Must have been 19. Yeah. And so then I started that and I must have done that over the school holidays. School holidays, cute. And then I'm just doing my business over the school holidays. And then when I went into third year, I wasn't sure if I was going to go back for third year, but I did. And I think I work really fast. So even when you get an assignment and you've got 6 weeks to kind of do your design development and I would, if I'd had to just do that, I would have probably designed 3 things for that project in that time. So I would kind of do the bare minimum at TAFE and show up when I needed to, set my homeroom up to make it look like I worked there. But I'm an introvert, so I just worked at home. And so then in the my spare time, I'd just sell, like make and sell all these clothes and then do my assignments when I needed to. Like I didn't hang out with anyone in my 20s, you know, like I just worked.
Yeah.
I wasn't someone who'd be like, yeah, I'm going to drink. And then I barely drunk. I think I took 6 months off from drinking then, and I didn't party.
Yeah.
I just worked really hard. I just like working.
So did that sort of expand? You went to Eros and then you went to lots of other different little stores with your little...
Yeah, so they were all mates. Like it was Penny at Eros, Leith at Varga Girl, Tony at Emporia, Nat and Alex at Department. Like just those, you know, like, and that was in the heyday of when you could have a brand. There was no high street back then. There was no Zara or, you know, it was basically you could get some high-waisted checkered shorts from Sports Girl, and there was Q and there was Cook Eye, but there wasn't anything where the trickle-down fashion happened really fast. So for a lot of young designers, that was, you know, it was amazing. You sold to boutiques. Boutiques were booming. People were willing to go and spend $300 on a dress, you know, and it made sense. And because I was doing all the production myself out of my parents'
That's what I was going to say. What did this look like?
My overheads were nothing. I had no rent, you know, like, so it was fine. And I wasn't doing it for money. I just was doing it because I loved it.
Did you have to have like a big fancy website? Like, were you marketing all the
No,
stuff?
I was thinking about this. I must have had a website eventually, but there was no Facebook or anything back then. You know, there was no Instagram or anything. So I wasn't really even marketing myself as a brand. I was just selling through these stores. Yeah, wow. As a business structure, it was completely different to how it looks now because of Instagram and Facebook and that platform that people can come directly to you.
So
back then you always needed like a third party. So, which was probably far better for me because, you know, that's a whole other thing to focus on. And I just wanted to make and sell, and I didn't want to have to deal with, you know, like building a website, all that. I was like, I think I found some Facebook albums with photos of the stuff that I made. Like we do
Is it
photo
good
shoots
if you
and everything.
look back at it now?
They're pretty good.
Are they really good? Would you wear them?
I mean, no, I wouldn't wear them now. It was funny because I didn't really make necessarily super cool clothes. I made clothes that were really flattering for women. Yeah. And because once again, I'm technically lazy, there was no zips or buttons in anything I did. It was all like stretch and like wrap closures and, you know, tie closures, you know. Oh, yeah. So I did like all these scarf tops where I'd get these vintage scarves and cut them in half and then attach them to a band, and they'd be like a halter neck top. And I sold like 150 of them or something, you know, like it was that really simple idea, which is kind of the same thing that I stick to now. You get a method and then you just change little things within that method, within that structure. So I did these wrap pants where I like screen printed all of these like bamboo kind of print on it, marbled bamboo. Yeah. And so the same thing, like that pant would fit a heap of different sizes. And so I sold like, you know, another 100 of those or whatever. So it was really, I think I realised without realising it, but that's what I liked. I didn't want to produce this range of clothes that had this depth and breadth, you know. It was more just like find something that works for people. And people could wear it when they were pregnant, or people could wear it if they, you know, there wasn't fixed waist. So I think for a lot of women, they felt really good in it and it was affordable. You know, like I think because I didn't really grow up buying expensive clothes at all.
You didn't want to make that. Yeah.
So I didn't really have this expectation and understanding of fashion that I was aiming towards. It was just like organically what I was working on that seemed to work for people around me. My friends were like, that's amazing, I'll wear that, you know. Yeah. And so, yeah.
Well, it exploded because soon after you were able to outsource like the sewing, cutting and production. But then, you know, on the outside, I guess you'd sort of go, great, killing it. But you sort of started to lose a little bit of love for it.
Yeah, it became a business.
Yeah.
And I was like,
nobody wants that.
I'm a child. I just want to muck around and, you know, like as soon as it became too structured and I had, like before I would just
do whatever.
Yeah, you know, like I'd be like, I'd just make a few things and take it in and see if they want it. When it was like you had to sell at a certain time, you had to, you know, get all your production sorted. I didn't love that. Structure. It just, you know, so I went traveling for a bit with my sister. Backpacking, which was just hell, pure hell. I just hate backpacking so much. I hate it.
Yeah, I can't see you as a backpacker. No. It's purely because I'm looking at what you're wearing right now. And I'm like, no.
But along the way, like we went all over the place. My sister got really sick with dengue fever, so we ended up in Edinburgh and staying with at a backpackers that my cousin owned. And so I was like, cool. Are there any jobs, like sewing jobs you need doing? Like, she's like, you could make a couch cover for that couch. I was like, great. So, that's all I wanted to do. I just wanted to work.
Little odd jobs. So you end up staying in London, and then because you had worked...
No, so I came back.
Oh, you came back before you went to London.
I came back and moved out of my parents' home with my boyfriend at the time to Cottesloe, had a spare room, did my label, then moved to Scarborough, did my label.
Yeah.
I was lecturing in that time as well. I went back to TAFE and lectured. Which is funny now to think about because I think I was like 23 with no teaching qualifications. But they were like, you're great and very confident, wildly confident, in fact. Do you want to be a teacher? I was like, great, sure.
And so then what took you over to London? That was just...
So then I was, doing my brand for a while and really feeling bored. And I had started painting and drawing on the side. Like, on the side, I mean, I was like, I'm going to paint 6 120 by 180 paintings, just in the garage. But I wanted a challenge, and I think there was some call out for Australian British Council to enter into this competition, and if you win, you get an internship and $1,000 spending money, and you go over to the UK for however long. But I didn't even get through the first round. But the seed had been planted, so I was like, I'm just going to go get my own internship. So I started applying at places, and I got a couple. Went over, did the trials or whatever for them, and I got one with Preen, but they looked too scary. And it was in West End and I kind of wanted to be in East End. So then I got one with Christopher Kane and decided to do that.
Which is huge.
Yeah, it was great. It was like he was the biggest designer in London at the time. So and I just started as an intern, but then they soon found out I was really good at sewing and really fast because I'd done all my own production. And so I just interned for a little bit. And while I was interning, they had 2 full-time machinists, and one of them, I was kind of in the background doing stuff and she was getting fired. And I was like, whoa, this is really awkward. But then afterwards I was like, I'm doing her job. So then I walked into the woman who runs at Tammy Kane's office and was like, so I think I should have her job. And she was like, how long have you been here?
How old are you?
I was like, I've been here 2 weeks. She's like, you're an intern, right? I was like, yeah, but I'm so better than her. You would be paying someone for it anyway. So why don't you just pay me? And then she was pretty affronted by my confidence. And then I had to really G myself up. Like I remember being like, oh, it's happening. I'm walking in. It's happening right now. And then she had slipped a Post-it note with we can pay you this much towards me. And I was like, oh, that's not enough. And she was like, what? And I just bargained for more money. And then I ended up just working there for a while.
Life is a jungle.
You got to work in all these really cool fashion jobs overseas, but at what point did you start to feel a calling to come back home?
Yeah, I mean, look, London was more about a massive personal transformation. You know, I'd left a relationship. I kind of had this inkling that unless I dealt with some personal stuff that was going on inside of me, I would never be a great creative. I was very self-conscious. I had lots of body stuff and eating disorder stuff for many years that I was just so sick of. And I think that was just a point where I was like, I have to work through this and I'm the only one that can do it. And I was in an isolated environment with not many friends. I had a friendship group there, but I wasn't super close to anyone.
Was it almost removing yourself from everyone and everything that you knew that gave you that space too?
Yeah, because there's no distractions. Yeah. So you are forced to be alone. And then there's no one kind of holding you in place with who they expect you to be. And then, because that's often when you're trying to go through a transformation.
People just pull you back.
It's quite confronting for other people. Yeah. Because it makes people look at themselves and go, ugh, that person's obviously working on themselves and I need to, people won't even be able to articulate that, but people going through transformation is, it's hard for other people. So it was more about that. And in that transformation, I realised that the thing that was making me feel like shit about myself was the fashion industry.
Oh, whoa.
Yeah. I mean, it's a no-brainer, right?
Especially, I feel like it's gone a little bit better now, but this was back in, it would have been brutal.
And I kind of felt like I had to be something more than myself to exist in that space. And at the same time, I was drawing and painting a lot in my tiny little shoebox of a room and reading so many spiritual books and doing so much yoga and, lots of lots of deep diving stuff. And when I was painting and drawing, I felt really validated.
So
I
did
felt
you
really
not get
right.
that same feeling when you were sewing, or no? That
No, because I was like trying to always make cool things.
Yeah, for
thinking
someone else that someone else would like.
Will
Yeah.
other people like this? Whereas with painting and drawing, there was no expectation for me to sell it. I was just doing it because I loved it and needed to. And I think then it got a good response. And when I left, I just gave away all of these paintings. And I gave away everything, really. I gave away all my clothes.
This is when you
paintings,
left
everything.
London
When
to
I
come
left
back
London to
home,
come back. Yeah, there was a kind of moment in London where I realised that I think I was over there for about 18 months, almost 2 years. I didn't have anything to prove to myself anymore, and I didn't need to prove anything to anyone else. I really dealt with that that voice of caring what other people thought.
Yeah.
I really kind of worked hard on blocking out other people's opinion of me and just working on what felt right for me. Basically gut instinct, and honing that as much as possible.
And was that key to that, just having that space?
Yeah, I
Going
think
within
so.
a bit, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think it's possible to do it whenever, but really the main thing is no distractions.
Yeah.
And you can just dedicate all of your free time to personal work, which does take a lot of time.
Oh, it's
and then when
so
people
much.
are like, come out and have a drink, you're like, yeah, that's a good distraction, because it's really confronting.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
horrible.
It's so hard to sit with
You know?
yourself and it's almost like recognize your flaws and like recognize what's
Yeah.
holding you back. Like that sucks.
It's like coming, exactly.
You take your
And-
turn out, it's easier to be like, oh, not today.
And in that, there's a lot of grief.
Yeah.
Because for me, I was like, I remember having a really distinct thought of like, imagine if every time I thought about like what I didn't like about my body or what other people thought about how I looked, imagine if I dedicated all of that time to being a creative, like how good would I be?
yeah.
And there was so much grief in that about how cruel I'd been to myself. And, you know, the self-talk, how nasty, it was just, you know, everybody has it, that self-critic. And it's really, I think when you come head to head to that and then you try to get over it, there is a grieving period of like, wow, I've been so mean to myself. I would never be that mean to someone else.
I do the exact same thing where you're like, what am I even saying to myself? Or like, how am I talking to myself? Or how come I'm just not my own biggest fan? Like I just, you know what I mean? And it's hard.
Yeah, the big thing for me was understanding that all of these opinions that were in my mind, which were actually mine, which were family that I'd been brought up with, which was society that I'd been as a woman growing up, you know, like really trying to analyze all of that and only keep what was valid for me about myself. Yeah.
Wow. I did that exact thing in COVID.
Yeah.
Because I was in Melbourne and I
Yeah.
had no friends.
Yeah.
I had friends. Shout outs to my friend Amy. But like, I had all that alone time. And
Yeah.
so then I was just like, you know, when it sounds exactly the same, I was just like, I keep repeating these same thoughts and I keep getting myself into these same situations. If I don't look at this and sit down with it and analyze why I'm thinking that and going to the root of why this first came up, I'm just going to keep doing the same thing.
Yeah.
And it was so good.
Yeah.
It was so free.
And
hard.
I think, it is
So
hard.
hard.
But I think there's a point at which you go, this isn't working for me anymore.
And you just have
like, what am I going to do?
Yeah,
just
it was that.
go to a party?
Yeah.
You know, like there's no
Yeah.
alternative here than to just keep pushing through this to get to the next part.
Well, so you come back to Australia. At this point, you've had this amazing 11-year career in fashion. How did you find...
Did I? Was it that long?
Was it 11 years? Have I
No,
thrown
I
out
think
the number?
I think I must have started when I was 19. I came back when I was like, oh, yeah, that's right. About 10 years.
Facts.
I think I came back when I was about 28 or 29, so 8 or 9 maybe.
Well, you have this huge,
yeah.
beautiful career in fashion. How did you find your way to painting? Like, where did that...
So when I was at TAFE, this figure drawing class was lectured by this guy, John Grew, who was a really great artist. And he was so loose, you know, like we weren't there unless we marked ourselves off the roll. Like he didn't know anyone's names. Yeah. He was an artist that managed to get this sick role at TAFE, paying great money. And he would do things like walk around and take all of our brushes away from us and give us like a fork or a jar or like a bread, you know, pick thing that closes, you know, and be like, you're painting with this today. So then you'd have to go around and find a palette that you can somehow dip your jar into. So it was really like about loosening up this process of unexpected mark making. And he would make us make paintbrushes out of our own body hair. He would make
wow.
us draw ourselves naked, which now I think about it, I'm like, we're all 18-year-old fashion students. And he's
Wait,
like,
what?
and we'd all have to like draw ourselves naked for our homework. A lot of people refused to do it. But I was like, yeah, I'll do it. I was into it. And he would get like figure drawing models that were like confronting to us. So either girls our same age, with different body shapes, men our dad's age, or he would always get this one backpacker, because there was so many backpackers who were keen to be figure drawing models. This one guy who was so cheeky, you know, like he'd wink at you and you'd been drawing certain parts of him. He was like, so he was really trying to like challenge us. He was probably just like getting a kick out of it. He thought it was really funny. Like women our grandmother's age, you know, just really different body shapes. And he just taught a really loose way of creating that spoke to me.
It sounds fun.
Yeah, it was so fun. And a lot of, you know, you do figure drawing in first and second year and third year that you couldn't do that, but a lot of third years would come back into the class just to loosen up again, to kind of remember that it's not just kind of working towards this final point in design, because it, you know, can get a bit, I don't know, like tight. So yeah, that kind of planted the seed, and I didn't realize until later that that's how I like to create, you know, like don't like ruin your clean ground that you're trying to work on to have something to work with. Problem solve, create problems to yourself. So I think I started with that, like, because when I learnt painting at high school, I was like, this does not speak to me. I don't care about blending. Like, it was all very technical. And but I do remember studying a lot of Brett Whiteley, and there was certain artists that really spoke to me as well. So I think I just realised that was, I felt right. I felt good when I was creating that way.
Did you know, though, coming back from London, that you were going to drop fashion, pivot into painting? Was it quite a clear thing in your head?
I mean, I think I came back and tried to start my label again, but all the production had disappeared, you know. It just was like, it was different. I think the landscape of commercial, you know, like having a brand at the time was also changing. It was either saturating or high street was becoming more prevalent, and people were able to get similar things for a lot less money. And, you know, like I could just tell that it wasn't, I kept literally falling over myself, you know, and I was like running around like crazy trying to get it all happening, but I would be tripping over, and I was like, something's telling me that this isn't really working, and I was exhausted. So then I just kind of took a beat, and I was living at my parents' as well, which was difficult. I lived there for 6 months when I came back, which, like we were talking about, it's like a rite of passage.
It's the creative process.
Everybody does it. But they were kind of separating at the time, so it was pretty heavy, you know. But, you know, that was also the time that I started getting my tattoos, which was really important for me. So it was kind of this necessary kind of break in that. And then I went back to lecture at TAFE.
Yeah.
I realised after a while I worked, like I didn't really want to be doing that, but I also needed a bridging gap. I started working in a retail store, which is hilarious because I'm bad at retail. Like, I don't care. It was like, I just, you know, now that I have staff, I think, God, I really took the piss. Like, I would just be drawing, and the owner of the store would come in, and I'd be like, hey. She'd be like, do you want to just sweep or something? I was like, this looks pretty good to me. I'm just bad. And then after a while of lecturing, I was like, I realized that I was painting at the same time. And that's when the heyday of like Instagram, Facebook was happening. So it was like, I knew, like, I would post something and people would say, can I buy that? I was like, yeah, sick. And I would sell it to them. And then, so there was a decent amount of money coming in from my part-time painting. And I think at the time I was living on my own out the back, like, of a granny flat in Freo, but I was painting and working in the same room, basically. Painting and living in the same room. That was really, you know, it's not good to be faced with your work all the time and there's no escape and you're in the same place. And kind of went a bit crazy.
Life is a jungle.
Hello, sorry for the interruption, or am I? I just wanted to take a second to thank sponsor of the show and friend of the show, American Apparel. In a nutshell, they have comfy, ethically sourced and sustainable clothing that will make you look pretty. And they also have a unisex range, so we could all of us, wear the same thing. Oh, imagine. Okay, let's all commit to buying the black hoodie with the text on the front, okay? Doing it now. Visit americanapparel.com.au. Okay, thank you, bye.
How long did it take for you to be plugging away at the painting before you got that momentum to say, like, get a studio?
Yeah, I mean, look, I came back in 2010, and by 2012 I was full-time with a studio. Yeah,
that's crazy.
It's pretty quick.
That's so quick.
Yeah. I
What
mean,
was
but
it?
I'm a
Was it-
psychotic,
you're-
like, worker.
Were you
know?
back
I just
into that, like your production days early on the fashion label of just going?
go.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd just work all the time. And I didn't have a partner. I was seeing someone, but it was a long distance relationship.
Yeah.
So I really had no commitments. So I just worked 7 days a week for years.
And
loved
was
it.
the way that you were selling them all via social media?
Yeah, pretty much. And then I must have got a website. Yeah, I must have got a website then. But even then, it was an e-com website. I think it was like Big Cartel or something,
Yeah.
you know. And then I started doing that. But for me, there's no grand plans ever.
That's
you
what I was
know?
going to ask. Yeah, because I mean, obviously, since going all in on your painting, you've established yourself as this iconic Australian painter and artist. You've worked on all these incredible projects. You've been able to create, which is just a dream for so many creatives, a sustainable, successful business, selling what you love. You've painted murals across Australia and around the world. You've had your work featured in the New York Times. You've collaborated with like Tom's, Uniqlo, Shu Rema, all these big brands. Like, so when you were pivoting into painting, were they possibilities of
No. God, no.
No.
It just all, you know,
Happened.
yeah. And I think that's a really important thing to remember, that if your eye is on what you want to happen more than what's actually happening. Like, it's great to have a goal. I do believe that, in saying that I never have goals. I just potter along. Like, I just think I don't have the energy to figure out my goals and write them down.
Yeah.
I think sometimes I think when you have a goal that you're so dead set going towards, sometimes you can have blinkers on and miss things that are actually great.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I just, you know, like, there was never this grand decision to be like, now I am going full time. You know, like, it's more that the income is there. It's supporting you. It seems like the right thing to do.
Yeah.
I'm always a leap first person. Like, if I can feel any fear about something, I'll usually try and focus in on what that is. Is it relevant, or is it just my stuff? Yeah. And then I'll go, okay, I just got to do it then. Because what I'm going to do is sit and think about that for another year before I actually do it. Like, the time between figuring something out and then actually doing it, all of that time in between can be really just reduced to a second, and you do it, and then things happen a lot faster. And momentum breeds momentum.
Oh,
you know?
yeah. I reckon once you get that success momentum, you get excited by it and you just keep going.
And that's it. Like, it doesn't happen without a lot of validation from other people through buying work.
Yeah.
You know, like, I felt like when I started selling work that I really enjoyed creating, I felt right. And I was like, yeah, I don't have to be outside of myself to do this stuff. I can just be me. I can just do what I do in my studio on my own, and that's enough. And that was really liberating.
What were some of like the big wow moments for you early on? Like,
I think a wow moment often happens when you really want... Like, I think the wow moments were more personal, like, understandings that if you are going for this opportunity because it seems like it's a really good idea for your career, and then you don't get it, and then you're actually so relieved that you didn't get it, those are the big wow moments, because it's like, I've got to stop thinking that I need to be more than I am, or that there's this big moment that's going to make my career.
Yeah.
And it's all just tiny steps.
Yeah.
I mean, that's, I guess the thing is, I don't look back on something and go, good job, wow moment. I'm like, what's next? Where are we going to go next? I mean, look, having the galleries was really good. The Sydney gallery was great, you know, but I think I kind of left before that had a chance to kind of establish itself. I was only there for maybe 18 months with the gallery open. But I don't know. I don't have a plan, you know? So it's like...
oh, it's like all working. It's great. It's
yeah,
like
I kind of think that's... Because as soon as I have a plan, and I always think I should probably have a business manager, or I should probably put someone on for marketing, like... And then I think, then someone's going to hold me accountable.
Yeah.
Then I'm going to have deadlines, and
Yeah.
then someone's going to tell me how to run my business. And I don't want that. I just want to be a kid.
Do you ever get like, say someone like a Uniqlo comes up to you and they want to collaborate, or a Shu Rema, like, do you get nervous? Like, when they're like, do you get any kind of like, oh my gosh?
I
Like,
do go into that same headspace of like, I need to be more than myself for this, because they want something spectacular.
Yeah,
and then
how do
it's
you
like,
pull
they actually
yourself-
just want
They just
me.
want you.
Yeah, they just want what I do. And I remember I remember when I was at TAFE, we'd have industry lecturers come back in, and this one guy, Paul O'Connor, was so great. I remember him saying once, like, because I was like, I hate this brief. This brief is not me at all.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, but the key is finding yourself within a brief. So you have to just keep pushing it until you can find an idea that you can latch onto, and then you flesh that idea out. And then it just has something loosely to do with the brief.
Yeah.
And I think often when you are doing collaborations, there's this expectation to create something that seems like it's what the brand is, but what the brand are looking for is something different. So I think it's more like you just do what feels comfortable.
That's really
It's what is inside you. It's usually a first idea for me. I'm always like, that's good and that'll do. Like, rather than going, it needs to be more. Usually then it becomes overworked and it's gross.
I'd be keen to hear what a day in a life is like for an artist, because in my mind I've got this very like romantic vision of you waking up really late, doing a bit of yoga, putting on like some bright clothes, like strolling into the studio, like having a coffee, doing a little bit of painting. Like, is it like nice? And
I'm a bit more militant about it.
Are you like this?
I wake up really early. I mean, I've got kids, so they have trained me to wake up about 5 o'clock every morning. Look, it looks different. I'm separated, so I've got my kids week on, week off. So kids' weeks are just wake up whenever they wake up in your face and just go like crazy to get them to school on time, all of that, the madness in the morning, and then get to my studio and then just kind of like stare at a wall for a while and try and figure out, like, you have to let everything, that's chaotic energy, and let it all settle. But most of the time, as soon as I get into my studio, I'll work on admin first, do my emails, whatever I need to do, because I'm fresh in the morning. And then it's almost like a reward. Like, if I get all of my admin done, then I get to paint. Yeah. And then I'll usually have lunch at like 11 and then I paint for the afternoon. But again, it's different because then I have to pick my kids up at 3. So you kind of finish work at 2:45 and then it's madness for another 5 hours until they're asleep. But then, it's different when I have my own time. I will wake up whenever, which is usually sometime between 5 and 6. And then I usually get up and start emailing straight away because that's when I'm like super fresh. And then try and get most of my admin done before I get to the studio. But I work a lot earlier. Like, I'll get into the studio at 7:30 or 8, probably leave at about 3, 4-ish. Maybe go for a swim, hang out with my partner, have a glass of wine, chat, debrief, and then chill. It's like a totally different life without kids. It's wild.
I was good though hearing you mention admin, because I think there would definitely be a perception that once you've made it to a certain level, especially like the success that you've had, that you kind of just get to ditch all the boring jobs.
Yeah. I mean, look, if you are really smart at outsourcing and you have great staff working for you, you can get rid of a certain amount of that. My business in the past have swelled to have full-time assistants that can handle a lot of that admin. But then there was a time in Sydney where I had a full-time staffer there who was in my gallery and a couple of other staff, but she was my main person. But I was kind of really tripping up with that next move to really delegate everything to her. I was kind of holding back a lot of stuff, but then I got hit by a car and broke my arm. So I couldn't really type emails properly anymore. So I was like, I guess she has to do a lot more stuff now, and actually help me really give her more responsibility and free up my time a lot more. And it was a really good lesson to be like, even though I would always be like, it takes too long to teach someone, and I didn't have enough faith in people. But then there's a lot of people who have way better organisational systems than me, clearly. I can't put a spreadsheet together. So just trusting people who are the right people for that. But then, I think also I did that for quite a few years, and then whatever happened must have been COVID, or I think I had kids, so I kind of brought it back in again and made it a little bit more of a smaller business that I could manage during that time. And I was a little bit more hands-on with that kind of stuff, which is really important to make sure that you are back in your business doing things, I think. Otherwise you can kind of, there was a few things where I was like, whoa, that's a very short verse about that, about shipping. Sounds a bit cruel. I think I need to be a bit, so just rewording, so.
You mentioned the kids. It'd be nice to kind of pivot into motherhood, because I know for myself when I'm like having to do something creative, if I'm stressed, it's like just not going to happen. I go for a walk. But I imagine when you've got like these little chaotic kids in your life, the stress levels would be up frequently. And then if you've got to create this amazing piece of art, how do you all of a sudden transition in that mindset from being like stressed here to like, I'm ready to paint something really beautiful? Like,
yeah. And it's really, I was thinking about this, it's really interesting because it's like this,
Yeah.
you know, it's never consistent. They go through different stages. I remember when I was pregnant, I was like, I've got no creative energy and both times, because I'm busy creating a human, you know? So there's really looking at things like that and being kind to yourself when it's not happening and go, it's just not happening, so don't force it, especially because you're exhausted as well. Okay. And then when you got little, like, tiny babies, you can't, like, create at all. Mind you, when I had my first child, I was in my studio when he would sleep, doing an hour here and there, which was pretty nuts, but I think I was still in that swing of things. And then you've got, like, the post, you know, birth hormones that keep you psychotically high for a little while, and then you crash hard. So, and then it's, you know, it's just been a balancing act in that time to figure out how much time I went back to 2 days work with my first, and then when my second was born, you know, like I took 6 months off or whatever it was in that initial period to be with them full time, and then I had a home studio, so I tried to work where I could. But yeah, your brain is a whole other monster when you know, it's really, you're exhausted. You know that creating something will make you feel amazing, but mustering up, number one, the energy and then the clarity to actually create something. That's where I think it was handy. I was painting proteas during that time. I started painting proteas as Harry was born. And that was great because there was a method.
Oh, so it was more like...
So it was a structure.
Changes, yeah.
And all it was colour palette changes or... Whereas I think if each new painting is a whole new story in itself and concept and everything, that's asking a lot of yourself creatively all the time. Because a lot of the time, painting's just really nice to do without having to be creatively on. You know, like just the action of it is sometimes enough to scratch that itch. And then other times you do have more creative energy where you're like, okay, today's the day. Something nuts is going to happen. You know, like this could be the beginning of something. And then it's not, and then you go home demoralised, and then you have to go, you know, like the like expectation of your own ability. So, but then, yeah, look, I think it's about making sure you got support and people who are around you. That is different. Is really different for me as well, being somewhat established by that time, that it was financially validated. That's a big thing, I think. I think mothers out of everyone need creative practices more than anyone, but society's view of a creative practice generally is that that time is not worth as much as someone's time who's making money out of their hours, you know, which is a real shame. And I think you have to work really hard in yourself. And that's where sometimes you just don't have the energy to stand up to everybody and go, but I need this. But yeah, it's tough. And then, I mean, look, yeah, then it can get easier because they get a little bit older and they might go to daycare or school or whatever. But then you're still met with, some days it just doesn't happen. You're just like exhausted.
Yeah.
And, you know, now I have my kids week on, week off. They go to school on Monday and they're picked up by their dad. So usually that Monday I will just have a day of nothing because I can't just go straight from a busy weekend with kids into, you know.
What do you do when you're creatively, like, because I definitely have days where I just can't even put pen to paper, or I can't write something, and I used to beat myself up about it, but now I know, just go do something else, water the garden, like, and you'll be able to come back to it on another day when you'll do it 10 times faster. Like, what's your process if you're like, say, in the studio and for whatever reason you're like, no,
can't do it.
Yeah.
I try and do peripheral things around the practice. So
Yeah.
I'll prepare grounds if I have to, like, gesso something, or if I have to photograph works for the next release, or, you know, like all of those little things that if I need to go buy something from an art supply store, all of the support jobs that mean that when I am on, I've got everything I need right there. And that's the good thing. Like, you don't need to feel creative to lug paintings around, you know. Just take stuff to the gallery or go and shoot some, like, set up a little shoot area, take it home. Sometimes when I'm not feeling on, but I know I've got digital work to do or whatever, I'll leave my studio, go home, and then I feel like I'm somewhat relaxed. I'll have a TV show on, but I'll still just be doing my digital work. So, yeah, I think it's like little tricks instead of like
packing in the day, whole day altogether. Yeah.
And sometimes, at least then, because I struggle with not feeling productive very badly.
I think we're very similar.
Yeah, like,
and then I'm like, wait, you
Yeah.
have not done a thing.
yeah. So I know that if I can just do something little, it will make me feel better about, And then so when I am creatively on, there's not this thing of like, oh shit, I need to photograph all those works for that release. It's like, I've done that, I'm here.
Life is a jungle.
What has been like one of the biggest obstacles as an artist that you found over the journey?
I think it's about the day-to-day practice and navigating that and balancing out what you truly want to do and what you might think is expected of you, or making the decisions between, like, this is a huge job that would make a lot of sense for my career, but I don't want to do it. You know, those decisions, and then speaking to the right people, making sure that you've got people around you that are good sounding boards and kind of understand it enough. And more than anything, it's just like talking it out. Like, I just talk to myself a lot of the time.
Do you have like a mentor that you...
I don't know. I don't have it's never been like a really formal mentor. My ex-husband was really instrumental in growing my business. He's an incredible business mind, and he really helped. He helped me build a really strong business and take things like opportunities that I would normally go, oh, I don't really know how to do this. He'd be like, here's my lawyers, let's get a contract, you know, like really flesh out things so that I felt far more confident when dealing with, and then I had structure around deals like that. And I knew, so he was, you know, very, very strong kind of mentor, I guess, for many years. But then other than that, it's often just friends who know me where I go, I'm thinking of doing this. I'll be like, what?
Yeah,
why?
Yeah.
That's insane. I'll be like, yeah, but is it good for me? And then as soon as I say, I'm like, yeah, what am I doing? Why do I feel like I have to? And I often feel like I have a few people that I used to lecture at TAFE, artists, and, you know, in fashion, and then they turn to art. And often I find when I speak to them, when they're seeking help and I speak to them, that helps me mentor myself. You know, like it helps me like remind, like practice what you preach. So yeah, I mean, because I have a problem with authority and I don't really like talking to people that much. I do, but you know what I mean? I won't seek out.
Yeah.
I try and solve my own problems, which can be a stubborn approach, and often I need someone else to talk to. But my partner now is great at being able to talk me through certain things, and really you're just finding your own stuff, right? Because it's like a kid, you know everything. And if you really you want to find the answer that's right for you, you don't want someone else to tell you what to do.
Totally.
You know, you need someone else to like make you think it was your idea.
Well, I have a lot of friends who are artists, and they were so excited when they found out that we were chatting. And the question that kept on coming up with them, because I was like, oh, what can I ask?
Yeah, that's a good way to find questions. Yeah.
Shout outs to my lovely cousin Olivia. She's a painter, and one of the things that she struggles with and was wanting to find out more about was, how do you actually do you have any tips for how you'd actually monetize what you do? Because I think a lot of people are in that stage where they might be creating something and they've got this thing that they've made, and then actually then taking it to like how you've done and built this incredible brand where, like I said at the start, you're able to like sell what you do and create, which is so awesome. And I think that's so many people's goals, whether it's painting, whether it's music, whether it's writing a film, but it's like getting it from like this little side hustle to the main thing. Like, do you have any tips for?
I think it's just like, it has to happen organically. It has to happen. It's not really your choice. You know what I mean? Like, you can put all intention behind it, but unless your work is good and it resonates with people, it's not going to sell. So if it's not selling, then you need to work harder and you need to refine your practice. And I think I find a lot of people that I talk to, they're like, how do I put myself out there? Yeah. And I was like, you don't want to be out there. You're an artist. You want to be in here. Like, the work should be out there, but you shouldn't. I think natural momentum is the only thing that's going to support your brand. And if your work starts to sell, then you test the prices a little bit, and I think having a website where people can buy, I think a website needs to read like an e-com website, like people would buy a dress, click through. It has to have all those features. I think a lot of people, I wasn't trained in the art world, I was trained in fashion. So there's always been an e-com side of my business where you see exactly how much it is online. Like, a lot of people would put it and then like price upon application, and you're like, that's going to stop people from, if they have to inquire how much it is, like, you need to be able to, people need to be able to see it clearly in all different forms and environments and click through and buy it, and your shipping needs to be clear. I think that's an important part of, because people are lazy consumers now, and your artwork might be great, but but the passage to buying it might be really tricky for people, and that will stop people from buying your work. Some people
streamlining
that, creating a website that's really clear and simple, and, you know, obviously trying to do it without too much cost. But I think you need to make sure that before that you're posting and there's momentum and people are liking it, because yes, Facebook and Instagram being monetized is quite hard to grow organically. But at the same time, if something is good, people will forward it to people, you know, like you will get traction organically.
I think a lot of people just picking up on that miss the piece on like the importance of having a website.
Yeah.
Separate to say like there's so much focus on social media. I heard somebody say, I can't remember who it was in a podcast, but like having Instagram and Facebook is a bit like renting, because you don't know what those apps are going to do, whereas having your own website is like owning your own home because you've got complete control of that. But it's like a step that's because of like, you can see how many people like your Instagram thing and your Facebook thing. They don't build like a website, but is that quite an important piece to
I think so.
Yeah.
If you want to go that path, it's really, I think you really have to figure out where you sit as an artist as well, because I've always had a business element to my creativity. They go hand in hand. I'm not someone that would just be happy creating a million things and not selling it, and I need to sell to motivate me. And I've always known that because I haven't come through art, that hasn't felt like a dirty thing. But I think the fine art world or the contemporary art world, it is, if you're a commercial artist, you're just not within that. And I think there's expectation when you are painting that you should be a certain, you shouldn't be too like, here's my stuff, buy it. You know, like you shouldn't be too accessible. There should be this kind of, but if you don't fit that, it's not a dirty thing to sell your artwork and make money and have a great life off your practice, you know? And I think figuring out where that sits, but also I have a business mind, and I find business quite fun and interesting, and I don't mind doing stuff on my website. A lot of people and I don't mind talking to people and selling my work, and a lot of people don't have that mix inside them, and it gives them huge anxiety to be in front of people or they don't want to make a website. So I think you need to figure out who you are rather than trying to force yourself to do things that you hate, because spending time on things that you hate, as we know, you'll procrastinate. It's the worst. So then if you're that person, it's better to go and try and find a gallery that will represent you. But then, you know, along with that comes a whole other part. Yeah. So if you are, inclined to sell your own work and you're fine with it, create a website, make sure it's easily navigatable. Is that a word?
I don't think so.
So, but I think it varies person to person, and you have to make sure that it has to be sustainable. Yeah. You can't be doing things that absolutely draw your energy, that you are dying from it, because it's not sustainable. So,
No, that's some amazing advice. Well, just to wrap, given, like I said, everything you've achieved, I'd be curious to know what success is to you. Like,
I think success is choice and freedom.
Oh yeah, I hear that.
You know, like I remember when I was working for designers in London, because I never worked for anyone else. I mean, look, I worked in
but you're a hustler with your clothes,
and I realize how much freedom means to me, and I work for myself. I don't mind all of the challenges and the stress of working for myself, because I can make my own rules. Because when I was in London, they were like, this is when you get to eat lunch. I was like, what are you talking about? What if I'm hungry 2 hours before? You know, like I was like, such a concept of like someone making rules about my life. That's bananas. So I think success to me is being able to choose. It doesn't necessarily mean money, or, you know, like obviously you need money to live. There has to be this kind of cycle that, you know, help itself go around, but a lot of that is freedom of choice and being able to choose what you want. Because that's the thing I could build. I know I could do so much more for my brand. I could like make it this big thing, but it would kill me and I would hate it. So I just keep it at a manageable size, which to me feels like enough success. I think when I was young, I had a real, probably more during fashion, I guess, because I was younger, this like hunger for success. And I remember reading articles in magazines being like, one day I'll be the person they're interviewing. And then after I started painting and selling work, I was like, oh, that's enough. I don't need to be out there. I don't need to have that kind of success. I don't
I
care
think it's
about
because if you want,
notoriety or anything.
well, that level comes with a certain other level of problems and stress. So,
Yeah.
like, do you want that versus do you want this?
Yeah.
And sometimes, like, I think I'm similar. I've realised that this is nice.
Yeah, exactly. Like that added stress. And I've
Yeah.
done that, especially I think when you have kids, you start biting off a little bit and then you go, oh, that's too much. I
Yeah.
need to take it back down a bit, because the stress ruins the rest of your existence. So I think it really has to be, success is having a manageable life that you enjoy, and then you have the freedom to be able to spend time with your kids and be present, which is difficult for artists anyway, like escapism is, our bread and butter. But I think it really is about feeling like you are choosing things in life rather than feeling like a victim and that life is living you.
No, I totally hear that. Well, where can people go to find
AnyaBrock.com.
Yeah, AnyaBrock.com.
Yeah, look, their website, which I really need to update more often. I've got a gallery.
You got an
now
amazing
in
blog on there.
Fremantle.
Your
I
blog
should
is
do
really
more
cool.
about
You should read the blog.
That's so old. I'd probably read it now and go, where was your
I loved
grammar and
it.
punctuation?
No, it was great. It was really good.
But then there's the gallery at FOMO in Freo. And then Instagram, and your paint face.
Well, no, thank you so much for your time. So inspirational. Really appreciate it. Before we go, I like to say life is a jungle. So have you got any parting wisdom to leave?
But we just
No,
this was a whole podcast on parting wisdom.
I know
you want more?
You parted with all your wisdom because you part with more. I know, sorry, panic. I was like, say something. I was like, I'm going to tell her.
Okay, let me think.
How to navigate the jungle of life.
Just figure out your internal roadmap first. Like figure out who you are at a young age if possible, and then everything's a lot easier. I mean, there's still challenges, but at least you're making decisions that are gut and instinct driven rather than like, I should be this and, based on outside validation.
Anya Brock, thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you so much for listening. You can find me on socials at Amberly Lobo, and for more information on the show, including all the show notes, visit amberlylobo.com. I'll see you next time, and remember, life is a jungle. Make friends with animals.
Peace and love.